Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it's fair to say that this brewery are best known for a combination of their big imperial stouts and also for their IPAs. And so they're definitely worth checking out if those are style categories that you enjoy. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases. This one is replacing one of their kind of long-term beers, I guess you could say, that they've had. And it is supposed to be pretty nice, actually. So I have to say, I'm quite curious to see what this one has in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to Kastrup in the south of Copenhagen, quite close to the airport. And we're going to have a look at another beer from Amager Bryghus. So this particular beer is called Samurai. It comes in at 9% ABV. And this one is an Imperial Double New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released very recently. I'm reviewing this one for you at the very start of March, and I think it was the last week of February that it was first released. But yeah, this one is meant to replace one of their kind of long-standing double IPAs. I think it might have been Gluttony. I think it was definitely one of the ones from the kind of Sinner series. But they brewed that beer for a very long time. But this one is intended to be the replacement for that. But yeah, we'll just need to see how we get on with this one. Big shout out once again to Jessica at Beer Hive in Amager. She's basically supplying all of my Danish beers these days. It's a lovely little beer shop. Go to Amager on the metro and you'll be pretty close to it. But she's got a great selection of Danish beers, among other things. But of course, when I go over to Denmark, it's mainly the Danish stuff that I'm interested in. So yeah, I'll put the link to her Facebook page and Instagram in the video description for you below. So go and check her shop out if you find yourself in Copenhagen. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Amager Bryghus before, and we will definitely add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because I'm in Skåne in the south of Sweden and I like to go over to Copenhagen quite often, and of course we get lots of nice Danish beer over there. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Amager Bryghus then, on to my brewery notes. So Amager Bryghus, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kastrup in the south of Copenhagen, and these guys are probably one of the best known Danish craft breweries outside of the likes of Mikkeller, Total, and I guess Evil Twin we have to include in there as well, because they were founded in Denmark. But the brewery itself was established back in April of 2007 by two long-term friends, Morten Valentin Lundsbach and Jakob Storm, and these guys had been homebrewers for quite a long time. But apparently back in school, the pair had been forced to do a chemistry and physics project together, so they wrote about the fermentation process that went on in beers, and this just really kind of captured their imagination, I guess we could say. But both went on to gain their brewing diplomas from the Scandinavian Brewing School in 2008, and the company has since gone on to become very highly decorated. The first brewery that they had was located in Tombu in the southern part of the city, and they constantly expanded this over the next few years. They had to buy a whole new brew kit in 2011, which took their capacity up to around 250,000 litres of beer per year, but eventually they did manage to expand this capacity to around 400,000 litres per year, and it was at this point that they felt that they'd outgrown their original facility. So they moved to a new site closer to the airport in 2018, which doubled their capacity, and they've been continuing to grow ever since then. It was at that point, I believe, that they changed over to selling their beers in in cans, or no, that was when they changed to 330 milliliter bottles, and since then they've moved on to the 440 milliliter cans. They opened up their tap house bar in Copenhagen next to Nørreport Station in March of 2019, and then a few months later they opened up a second bar in Amager called Bryghus, and I do need to go and check that one out actually and see what it's all about. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced in the region of 330 different kinds of beer, and I must have reviewed about 25 or so from these guys over the years. We have done quite a few different beers from Amager Bryghus. But yeah, in terms of the beers that I reckon you must try from them, I would say the Batch 1000, that's one of the best West Coast double IPAs that was ever produced in Europe, in my opinion. The Amager Fredriksen as well, the Imperial Stout, that's a really, really good old school Imperial Stout. That was one of the first beers that I tried from them, if memory serves me correctly, but there's been various ones over the years that I've enjoyed. Arctic Sunstone, Winter in Bangalore, these guys really back in the day produced a mean West Coast IPA, and the Bastard Princess, which was their very first New England IPA, was also very nice. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can really tell you about Amager Bryghus for the moment. These guys are, I think, one of the biggest by volume craft breweries in Denmark, obviously behind Toul, because they've got Toul City now. But yeah, these guys were one of the best known ones outside of the ones that we mentioned there, the Mikkeller Toil, and I guess Evil Twin in that case. So try some of their beers, they are pretty damn good. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a look at this beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, you get that beautiful artwork that you always get from Amager. I always forget the guy's name who's the artist here. It's usually on the can, but they've brewed a few beers in his honour as well. But yeah, they do have, there it is, Simon Hartvig Dalgaard. Yeah, he has some awesome artwork, and it's pretty cool. You always get some really cool things from him. But there you can see the Amager Bryghus symbol. This of course has been updated fairly recently, because they used to have the one that was like a kind of gold roundel with a tap on the end. That was pretty nice. But yeah, the Samurai. And we'll read a little bit of this blurb as well, because they always put an interesting wee blurb on these beers. So, anyone who has ever met our bear-like head brewer Jakob Storm has probably noticed that deep in that always smiling face there is an extra layer of depth and mystery. And if you look really deep, Jakob hates that, you will recognise some unmistakably Asian facial features, or more specifically Japanese. Today most of us may see him as the epitome of an Amager boy, but Jakob's ancestry goes way back to a far more colourful past. In 1869, Jakob's 7 times great-grandmother, Candelia Storm, sailed as a ship's cook aboard the Dutch merchant clipper Cosmopoliet II. Japan was slowly opening up to the world after a long period of isolation, but not everybody in Japanese society approved of this change, and as Cosmopoliet II pulled into Tomakomai harbour on Hokkaido Island in February of 1869, fate had it that the island had just been captured by a traditional samurai warrior clan and renamed the Republic of Azo. The samurai wanted absolutely no dealings with the Dutch merchants, with one exception. Candelia Storm had spellbound the leading samurai officer to a degree that went all the way to marriage and a baby. However, the rebellious Republic of Azo did not last for long, and the changing times overthrew not only the Samurai Republic, but also Candelia's marriage, and she ended up back at Amager with a very exotic-looking baby boy, and a story that the locals found hard to believe. In Azo, he had been called Aimoku no Shenshi, the blue-eyed warrior, but back home in Dragor, he was simply called Jakob, as everybody's firstborn boy in the Storm family has been ever since. This tale has been buried in a mist of family secrecy for many years, but now you know, and we hope you will enjoy this tribute beer to Jakob's samurai ancestry. Interesting. I do wonder if that's true. Like, some of the things they write in these in these things are pretty interesting. But yeah, oddly enough, I'm actually doing a Japanese history course through the university this term, because I learned Japanese because of my family connections there. But yeah, that is quite interesting actually. We haven't quite got to that period of Japan yet, because that is just before the Meiji Restoration actually, if we're talking 1869, or just after it. I think it's 1867. if I remember rightly. So yeah, that is pretty interesting. So yeah, you can see it, black top on the can. To give you the details of the beer, as we said earlier, this one is a 9% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. The malt base in this one is Pilsner and Carapils with some wheat malt and oats, and the hops in this one are Soriachi Ace, Simcoe and Sabro, and it's got a London Fog yeast. So we know all of these hops fairly well, and of course this is one of the things about Amager Bryghus, they love Soriachi Ace. But you know, Simcoe and Sabro, we know these two hops quite well, both American. Simcoe comes in about 12% alpha acid, and a New England IPA, it's going to give you that lovely kind of soft passion fruity character. Sabro on the other hand is about 14% alpha acid, and it gives you that kind of orangey, coconutty type vibe. Soriachi Ace on the other hand can be quite a high one. It can give you anything between 11 to 16% alpha acid. This hop originated in Japan, and it has this really kind of sharp, lemony, zesty, almost, it's just a really powerful lemony, zesty character I remember that you get out of Soriachi Ace. I don't know if I've ever had Soriachi Ace in a New England IPA, come to think of it, so this should be pretty interesting. But yeah, quite apt that they used the Japanese hop and they named it Samurai as well. So yeah, most of the Soriachi Ace these days though I think is grown in America. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting now. A 9% New England double IPA. This might be the strongest double IPA, or New England one that I've had at least from Amager Bryghus, and it is pretty fresh as well. I think this was only canned about a week and a bit ago, something like that. So we're getting this in good condition, very good condition. There we go, that'll do for the moment. Let me just line that up so it looks nice for the video. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured with just over a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. That's not a perfect white head that's on this one, not that it matters overly, but yeah, this one has got a bit of a kind of creamy tint to it. So in terms of the in terms of the colour of this one then, it's got one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice. In terms of the colour, I think this one is like a kind of mixed tropical fruit juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, this one has that kind of mixed sort of mango passion fruit juice kind of vibe to it. But yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, and any barrel aging or adjuncts that you put in are going to also affect that as well. But yeah, the in this one it'll be mainly the malts going a long way to determining the EBC rating. But very nice looking beer, I have to say. I think this does look pretty good. For a 9%er, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've come across, but it is certainly pretty damn opaque. And remember, the haziness in these beers depends on the oat content, the wheat content, and also to a degree the yeast. But yeah, there is a fair little bit of this. There are 1 or 2 wee particles just floating around in this beer as well, as you can see. But yeah, certainly looks as you would expect for a modern kind of New England hazy IPA. But let's have a look at this one then from the aroma and see how we get on. I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the appearance of this beer. So aroma time, let's do this. Now, that's quite interesting. So, first impression of this beer from the aroma perspective. This one, it's definitely kind of it really has a very kind of soft, bready sort of vibe to it. And as I've said to you before, for me, for New England IPAs, there's 6 different things to think about. Sometimes they can be farmhousey and yeasty, they can be rye leaning and grainy. These two are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, but then you've also got wheaty bitey character, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and then sometimes some sweetness. This one really leans towards like a soft barley malt bread for me, but at the same time it does have a wee bit of a kind of oaty sweetness to it. You can smell that, and that's also interesting because, as I've said before, for me when it comes to New England IPAs, usually when it comes to these beers, they usually when it comes to these beers, when you have the oats and the oats start to smell a little bit kind of dry and things, that's telling you that the beer is a little bit older, because the more creamy character you have in the oats, the kind of fresher the beer is. But this one gives you a little bit, you can smell quite a few interesting things on the oaty side of it as well. But yeah, it does smell nice. The more that you smell of it, it gets a little bit sweeter and creamy. It does have that kind of soft barley malt bread to it. The green component for me overall is quite kind of soft actually, which is interesting, and the fruitiness is a little bit kind of zesty, I think we can say. But yeah, aroma wise, this one is very, very nice. So let's kind of go into that a little bit more in depth then. So the malty backbone of the beer, absolutely you get a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust underneath there. That goes together very, very nicely. That's the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you can smell like a kind of fresh, fluffy, white bready character, which again I quite enjoy. You get a little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose with this one, and you can smell the fact that the wheat is thickening up that malty character in the beer as well. But I'd say overall, the overall impression of that malty backbone is like a very soft, kind of fluffy, fresh white bread. The oats are coming out as well. There's a lovely smoothness to the oats. I wouldn't describe them as overly creamy, which, as I say, when the beer is as fresh as it is, that's kind of surprising because usually they come across as creamy. We'll need to see how that goes in the flavour. But yeah, you do get a little bit of that sort of dry, powdery character from the oats, but it smells kind of sweet in a sense, which I like. But on top of that, there's a lovely little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of vibe to this beer. So yeah, I really like how that goes together. Aroma wise, this one is pretty damn nice actually from the malty side of things. Yeah. I always like it as well how Amager, they like to put Pilsner malt and stuff in their beers, and it just gives you a wee bit of crispness in the New Englands as well. So we'll talk about that in the flavour because there is a way to detect it usually, or I know where it usually comes up. So we'll see if it does that in this beer too. But the more that I'm smelling of this beer, the more the kind of fruity side of things becomes more and more pungent actually, which is interesting. But Soriaceae is a really interesting hop. So yeah, let's focus on that green component then. I don't think we need to say anything else about the malty side of the beer. So on the hoppy side of things, I do get a teeny little bit of earthiness, but that, to be honest, is quite minimal. There's a good little bit of floral aromaticity there as well, which I like. Yeah, there's a good little bit of floral aromaticity in there, and there's also some nice kind of zesty grassiness too. The green component's not overly pungent, to be honest with you, so let's focus on the fruity side of things. On that fruity vibe, there's definitely like a big pungenty citrus character with this one. So on the tropical side of things, you can definitely get the sort of passion fruity note. You can get a wee bit of the passion fruity character from the Simcoe in this one, but you can also get a wee bit of the kind of orangey and coconutty thing from the Sabro. That's definitely there, but the Soriaceae really is the anchor of the hoppy character in this one. So you've got this big sort of pungenty, it's not quite a lemon character, but it's not far away. It's like got lemon, but it's got also a little bit of a kind of, I've heard people say that, Soriaceae is like, it has this kind of coriander element to it, and you can get a little bit of that in this, absolutely. I always find that coriander is a bit of a strange thing to have as a descriptor for kind of fruity things in a hop, but then again, so is coconut from Sabro. So Sabro and Soriaceae will be quite an interesting combination. But yeah, you've got this really prominent, almost like melony, lemon type character that's just sitting underneath the Sabro and the Sabro kind of orange and the Simcoe kind of passion fruit mango sort of thing. So it's really interesting. When it comes to Soriaceae, two other hops that it kind of reminds me of in some way would be the Cashmere, and Cashmere, I really got into that because of some of the Slovenian beers that I've had. They love Cashmere down there. Green Gold Brewery and the Roynick Hop Farm, they grow a lot of Cashmere there, but it has that big pungent melony sort of thing. But you've also got Strata these days, which has that big kind of melony component that can kind of dominate the flavours. So, Soriaceae, I think, Cashmere I found can be a very dominant hop when you use it. Strata can do that as well, but Soriaceae is probably the OG hop in terms of that kind of pungent citrusy vibe that it has. So you can kind of smell that going on in this one. I've not had Soriaceae in a very long time basically, and this one really reminds me of some of the beers that I've had with Sabro, no, sorry, not Sabro, with Strata and Cashmere in more recent times. But it's really nice, and I'm finding that it's starting to sweeten up. The fruity side of the beer really sweetens up a little bit the more that you examine the aroma. But I think we've examined the aroma as much as we need to, and we should have a taste of the beer now. So let's do that. So this one is the Samurai, a 9% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Amager Bryghus in Copenhagen in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Very curious about it. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh, I like that. I do like this. Now, this one for me, it just kind of hits the spot in a way. I think it will still be very difficult for batch 1000 to be toppled, in my opinion, as my favourite ever Amager Bryghus IPA. And I think that's probably just, I always talk about the nostalgia factor as well with beers, and I think that's part of it with batch 1000. But this is a damn good one. I really like this. This kind of suits me. I love a big oily mouthfeel when it comes to beers, and this one keeps that big kind of oily mouthfeel that you always got from the Amager Bryghus beers back in the day, but it has the kind of New England vibe to it as well, which I think is interesting. It's got that nice kind of smoothness that you get from their New England IPA. So I think this one kind of finds a sort of happy medium. And it's interesting because Amager Bryghus, I guess you could say in a way, these guys produced a lot of the West Coast IPAs for a lot longer than some of the other Danish or wider Scandinavian breweries. Actually, these guys have been brewing the more West Coasty ones for a while, and I think the beer that this replaced, I think it was the Gluttony. It was one of the ones from the Sinner series, of course, but I think the Gluttony was a big West Coast double IPA. I never got to try that one, unfortunately. But yeah, this one, I think this is nice. It's a modern New England double IPA, but it still has that big oily mouthfeel, I think, that I always enjoyed from Amager Bryghus. So yeah, I like it. Yeah, this is very, very nice. But the brewer they've got at Amager Bryghus, is her name Mariana Schneider? She's Brazilian. She used to work for Brewski in Helsingborg, but she really knows what she's doing. She always produces some very good beers, and of course, Jakob and Morten are still involved in the brewing as well. But yeah, this is great. So let's try and break this down for you and just describe it a wee bit more. So it is pretty damn fresh, this as well. It's got the more I drink of it as well, the juicier it gets. So yeah, let's focus on that middle third of the palate then. The backbone of the beer, we've got that lovely kind of bread crusty vibe to it. So yeah, a lovely little bit of a kind of bread crusty, hedgehog roll, fresh white bread crusty base. On top of that, you get a little bit of the kind of fluffy white bread, but then quite quickly you can feel the wheat just sort of thickening it out and rounding off the bready side of the beer. So I do really like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, on top of that, you can feel the nice smooth oaty character coming out of the beer too. So yeah, you've got a lovely big kind of smooth oaty character coming out of this one, and the oaty notes are very, very creamy as well. It's actually, in a lot of ways, this is quite a straight shooting beer. I would say that it is quite a straight shooting beer in a lot of ways. It doesn't really do anything surprising for the style, if you like, but it is just well done. It is just a well crafted beer, actually. It's certainly not the creamiest of New England IPAs, but it's a very smooth and sort of a more oily example of the style, I guess we could say. But anyway, on top of the kind of thicker wheaty layer, you can feel the nice smooth oaty notes, and overall, that middle third of the palate isn't it's quite dense, actually, but it's also very, very smooth. In the centre of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of you've got a really nice kind of you do have that nice, you've got a nice little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity character to it from the Pilsner malt. And the thing you'll notice is that toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of crispness out of this beer, and that is the carapils and the Pilsner malt that they've used in this. You can feel just that little bit of crispness toward the back of that middle third of your palate, but certainly as you come further forward, you get a little circle, and it feels like a slightly, there's a bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuit in there, and a wee bit of a more concentrated, kind of sweet caramel sort of vibe to this beer. But yeah, I like how that goes together, absolutely. So, yeah. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the malt base in this one. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, it sweetens up a little bit. And you know, if I think about this one in comparison to some of the other Amager Bryghus beers, I think the oats in this one are actually a little bit kind of wetter and smoother, if you like. But maybe it's just because of how fresh I'm having this one. I think this one has pretty much, I think it was only canned like a week or two ago, something like that. And I think I saw the Amager post just about a week before I actually went over to Denmark to pick it up from Beer Hive. But yeah, malty wise, this one is pretty nice actually. But let's focus on the back third of the palate and then the hoppy side of things then. So border region between middle third and back third of the palate. A little bit of a bready build up once again, and that kind of fresh bread crusty quality. The base of that back third of the palate is a little bit more, the base of the back third of the palate is a wee bit more kind of, you get a bit more of a kind of grainy bread crust out of it, which I do like. But then sitting on top of that, you get a thicker white bready character, which is nice, but it still feels kind of quite fluffy, but there's a wee touch of graininess in there. On top of that, you can feel the wheat, and the wheat actually does have a fair bit of bitiness in the back third of the palate as well. But then on top of that, you can feel the yeasty side of the beer. So the yeasty side of the beer has a wee bit of that woody, crackery sort of thing that you can sometimes get, but you've got a little bit of a more dense, you do have a little bit of a more kind of dense, bread dough kind of thing out of this, which is quite nice. So yeah, the yeasty side of this beer I think works quite well, and it just adds a wee bit more complexity to it. But on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is distinctly taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit, and the flavours squash together that little bit more into the middle third of the palate there. So yeah, I really do like how that goes together. Yeah, it's a very nice beer, this one, from that perspective. So let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So on the green component, there is a wee bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward along the side of the palate with this one, it does actually have quite a deep floral aromaticity to it, and it's got me wondering, I do wonder if they'll have used some of the Soriaci Ace as a bittering hop in this. Now remember, New England IPAs rely mainly on late addition and dry hops. West Coast IPAs also, in addition to those, do have the early addition hops as well. So early addition hops give you mainly bitterness. Late addition hops within the last half hour of the wort boil, they give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping is completely flavour and aroma orientated. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this one actually has the fact that the floral aromaticity is a bit deeper makes me think, yeah, potentially there's been a bit more early addition hopping in this one, and knowing Amager, they like a bit of bitterness in their beers, so that would make sense. Be curious to know, but it could just be the sheer pungency of the Soriaci Ace. But anyway, round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy. You've got that nice bright floral aromaticity coming out of the beer, which I do enjoy, and yeah, I think it works. I do think it works very nicely in this one. So yeah, that's the green component for you. Let's focus on the front third of the palate. So border region between middle and front and middle third of the palate. You get a little bit of a bready build up there once again. You get a nice kind of base of a soft white bready character, and on top of that you get the nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So, fruity side of the beer, it's actually a kind of mix between being kind of fruity and between being juicy and oily. But I do really like how this goes together. So it's kind of like I described in the aroma. The base layer on both the back half and the front half of that front third of your palate is a really strong, lemony, citrusy character. It's not melon, but it's a really pungent lemony character that you get out of this one. And that's the thing that's always made Soriachi Ace a very unique hop. So yeah, on top of the on top of that, you can feel it. The Soriachi Ace really does dominate this. I mean, you get a little bit you get a wee bit of a more pungent passion fruit toward the back of the front third of your palate. As you move further forward, there's maybe a wee bit. Is there a bit of like a slightly dry mango or something like this? Yeah, when you take the liquid in, you get a bit of a juicy mango out of it, sitting on top of that, in fairness. And as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, there's a wee bit of a juicy kind of orangey note, and you can feel one or two of the wee coconutty notes from the Sabro as well. But yeah, overwhelmingly, this is it's really a very kind of lemony, zesty leaning beer, this one. The Soriachi Ace dominates, and as I said, you've got some hops like Cashmere, Strata, and obviously Soriachi Ace as well, where there's this big citrusy component that just dominates, and that is what's happening with this one. But I like it. It's something a bit different. It really has a different vibe to it, this beer. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is very, very nice, this one. So yeah, if you like a kind of big oily lemony character, then this one, I think it's going to suit you. But it doesn't. It has a wee bit of a limey note to it as well. I think the further you go into the aftertaste with it, you get a wee bit of lime towards the tip of your tongue. So the fruity component of this one is quite unique, but I like it. This is quite different to a number of the kind of the New England IPAs I've had in recent times, which have been a bit more kind of sweet and oaty, creamy sort of thing. This one has a wee bit of an old, oily, biscuity character to it, and it's got a more pungent, citrusy component rather than being tropical. So yeah, this is interesting for me. But I think that rounds up everything we need to say on the flavour. Let's look at the mouthfeel quickly. So this beer is definitely pushing towards the top end of mid-bodied for me. The carbonation's very smooth. Like I said, the beer has an element of creaminess to it, but it's also kind of oily at the same time. In terms of IBUs, I think this one is a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if this is 40 IBUs. It could be a little bit more at 50. As I said, Amager Bryghus like a little bit of bitterness in their beers. The malt base is mainly quite smooth. There's a bit of creaminess in there, a little touch of sweetness and crispness as well from the use of the Pilsner malt, which I do like. And then the fruitiness, as we said, is quite a pungent, citrusy sort of thing. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together is pretty damn interesting. I like what this one is doing. So yeah, another solid addition to the Amager Bryghus range, and if it's going to be one of the regular beers, I think it will go down pretty well. It has a bit, it's like obviously it's a New England IPA, which is the style that people are more into these days, but it does maintain a bit of that kind of oily, caramelly sweetness that we always liked back in the day from Amager Bryghus. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Amager Bryghus as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. In the meantime, check out my social media, check out Amager Bryghus social media, do check out Beer Hive and Amager in Copenhagen as well, and I will catch you guys in the next review. This one was the Samurai 9% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Amager Bryghus in Kastrup, near Amager, in the south of Copenhagen, Denmark. Slange, skål, and cheers.